recording, please. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 19th Restorative Justice Grant Advisory Committee meeting. Today, the goal is to give you all an overview of the 2023 to 2025 solicitation, request for grant proposals, and that entire process. For the record, my name is Casey Beck, and I'm the Behavioral Health Program Manager here at the Criminal Justice Commission. But this is actually just a very quick hello to say goodbye for now, because I'm going on maternity leave in a month, less than a month. So it's wonderful news, but I am leaving the Restorative Justice Grant Advisory Committee in the very capable hands of Rima, my colleague, who you have met, throughout RJ processes, and may probably have even seen in person at some of the conferences. But with that, we're going to pass it over to Avery to take roll. And then I'm actually going to kick this meeting over to Rima, and I'll be here the whole time if we have any particular questions. But Rima's ready to roll on this, and I'm excited for the next, 3.5 months or so to see how RJ rolls out. So Avery, over to you for roll.
Perfect. Tristan Edwards.
I'm here.
Thank you. Aaron Knott. Shannon Wilson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Carrie Naughton. Vanessa Timmons. Simon Fulford.
I'm here.
Elaine Walters.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jimena Ospina Todd. She let me know she would not be able to attend. Michael Kaiser. And Kathleen Meehan-Coop.
Here.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it back to Rima now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Avery, for doing roll call. As Casey mentioned, my name is Rima Atung, and I'll be taking over for her, at least in the interim, while she's on maternity leave. I'm super excited to be part of this project. I've kind of been working behind the scenes for a little while, so hopefully my name isn't completely unfamiliar to you. I do have somewhat of a background in restorative justice, although it's more on the post-conviction side of things. So if you folks can just bear with me and, feel free to share any information on the, community-based pre-conviction side of things that we're really focused on here. And certainly if I, make an assumption or get something incorrect, please jump in and feel free to correct me. I'd really appreciate it. But as I said, I'm really excited to be working more on this project. So today, as you could see from roll call, we have 5 members present, so we're not at full quorum. We really structured this as an informational meeting. So we're going to go through, the request for grant proposals that we sent out on Monday, and then your roles and responsibilities moving through this process, and where you can really be helpful to us and help us help you. So we're going to pause before we jump into all the information for public comment. So let's just have 2 minutes that we set aside for public comment now. All right, I don't see anyone raising their hands or anything to do public comment at this time. So I think we can go ahead and move forward. And I know Casey mentioned it Kind of briefly that this meeting is being recorded, but I just want to reiterate, so this is a public meeting. We are recording it. If folks have a comment, please raise your hand or speak up so we can get that on record accordingly and make sure things are addressed appropriately. And a recording of this is going to be available on the CJC YouTube channel. So just in case anyone needed that disclaimer, that is occurring. And I apologize, this is very early for a meeting, so if I speak English, then I'm considering that a win. Jump in at any point if you have questions or comments. This is really supposed to be kind of a discussion, so that is very much welcome. So first, we're going to kind of talk through the request for grant proposals. We kind of expected, like I said, that we wouldn't have full quorum based on the responses we got from the meeting invitation, but we really wanted to have this discussion and sort of pre-meeting with you and follow up on a few things that we ended with during the last GAC meeting that we had. So, and the RFGP has such a short time frame for both getting the funds awarded and the new project period. Like I said, we really kind of wanted to touch base with you, get your feedback and direction as we move through this process, and make sure that we can give you the information in the next meeting that is going to be most helpful to you. So we're going to briefly go through this RFGP that was sent out on Monday. Hopefully folks have had a chance to look at it. If not, no worries, we're going through it now. I do want to note that, we're really relying on you and other folks on our interested parties list, et cetera, to get the word out. So if you know somebody who may be eligible for funds through this, please feel free to share it with them. Any questions or comments so far? Nope, I see people shaking their heads. Excellent. So here is the timeline we're working with. As you can see, it's pretty short. We're trying to get this money out as soon as possible. We're kind of at the end of the biennium and we have a little bit of funds left over. We want to get that out so those are used, to the purpose that this program was established for. So the RFGP opened on the 16th, on Monday. Today is the 19th. We're having our first pre-meeting. We have the webinar scheduled for the 23rd. The application has the standard, 6 weeks to get it completed. Thankfully, we don't have to shorten that or anything. So that's due October 28th. And I do want to point out here that this little tiny gray bar is where our staff review lives in this week here. So we have a really short turnaround time, like I mentioned. So that's where your direction is really going to come in. Then we have the next application review meeting, which we're hoping to schedule this week of November 4th, and we'll talk about scheduling it towards the end and what time you folks might have available. And then the November-December commission meeting hasn't been scheduled yet. We're kind of working around folks' holiday schedules. It's a difficult time of year. So that's why there's no date set for this yet, but we want to get the funds approved if we can in November or December so that we can get them out right at the beginning of the year and get those contracts started. So, any new folks, especially that get awarded, have that full 6 months to do the planning grant for the new folks that are eligible for that. So any questions or comments about the timeline? Nope. All right. So, as you folks recommended, we have that 1.3 odd million dollars that didn't get used by existing programs. So we put that out through 2 avenues. Thankfully, the CJC Commission approved your recommendation, so it's going to be available as supplemental funds for capacity building for our existing grantees. And that application, we tried to make it as easy as possible. We kind of streamlined it and made it available as part of their Q8 reporting process, so they can just log in and on our grant management system, submit their Q8 reports, and if they choose to, also request additional funds and give us their narrative at that point. Oh, quarter 9, sorry. Thank you, Avery. Brief correction, quarter 9, not quarter 8. And then for new applicants, we have planning funds available since we do have that really short time frame. We thought, getting a full program up and running is going to be a little bit difficult, and you folks recommended just giving funds out so that new applicants could, plan a restorative justice program. So for that, folks that are eligible are, programs that are not currently funded under the restorative justice program. The anticipated product from this is a plan of action to implement a new program. So we're not expecting the program to actually run during the 6 months. It's really for them to get everything ready to do that community assessment and planning process to figure out what they need specifically and what that would look like. The program plan must align with all of our, existing grant application review criteria as listed in the statute, and we'll get into that a little bit more in this presentation. And, again, our priority at this point is really to get these remaining funds out so that they're supporting the programs that are providing these restorative justice projects in the community, and we're really upholding the purpose of this grant. So let's just briefly go through the grant program requirements. Hopefully these are familiar to you as well, but I just want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page and we have these in our heads as we move on to your role in this process, and we have the same baseline. So the grant program requirements are that, anything funded must serve the definition of restorative justice as established in the program rules. And that means it must be a front-end program, so pre-conviction, pre-adjudication. And this nice graphic here that somebody else made, kind of shows all these different points where a funded program could live, and they're all, obviously pre-conviction, pre-adjudication. Some of the other requirements in the statute are that it must be centered on the experiences of those harmed. The program must encourage those who cause harm to take responsibility and repair harm, must support persons who have been harmed and impacted community members, must coordinate with community-based organizations. I know that's come up in conversation with the few meetings that I have sat in on. I can't talk this morning, I'm sorry. And there must be this collaboration with system partners of various entities, including law enforcement, courts, and district attorneys. So I know you guys are really familiar with these priorities, and you are very good at keeping the conversation focused on them. But again, I just wanted to make sure we all have the same baseline. So grant program requirements also include who is eligible to apply, and that's public or private entities. And there can either be established or implementation program types available. And somebody just took control of the PowerPoint. Did it drop off for everyone? Okay,
It did drop off for video, and now I try resharing.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Please.
Too early for the PowerPoint also.
The computers are even not okay with starting this early. All right, so we're back up, hopefully. Just gonna go back to where we were.
We are indeed, and yep, grant program requirements slide.
Excellent. So establish funds to build an existing restorative justice program and implementation to build a new program. So that is directly in line with our RFGP that we have out right now. In addition to those requirements, there's also a list of preferences that are defined in the statute. So they're, offering services to engage rural or historically underserved regions, culturally appropriate services, partnering with a research entity, um, addressing cases involving person felonies or misdemeanors, addressing case types that carry a presumptive prison sentence, prioritizing funding for services to the party harmed and person who committed them, and then not disqualifying participants based on prior criminal history. And we'll get a little bit more into what this means later on when we talk about your role. But as you can see, there's already kind of a lot laid out within the statute. It was very thoughtfully crafted towards getting, a restorative justice program that was effective and, met all of the needs of this particular, point in time and service population. So given that, we're now going to jump into the roles and responsibilities in the application review that you folks have and how those priorities and requirements and preferences play into that and how we can move forward. Again, so our role is to do the preliminary review, assess applications for adherence to program roles, and then ensure that you folks are applying those rules consistently. Your role is to also look at the evaluation or evaluate the applications, have that robust discussion that you guys have been having, and then approve the applications that are sent to the commission and they make the ultimate funding decision. What that means, well, sorry, let's do conflicts first. I apologize. So, since you folks are acting as public officials, we do have to go over this information, and we wanted to do it now since, it'll just help streamline the process later. As I said, we're on a time crunch. So if any GAC members have actual or potential conflicts, and that occurs when a public official participates in an action which would or could result in financial benefit or loss to you as the official, your relative, or business. So if any of you folks are associated with one of the grantees, then that might constitute a conflict. So anyone who has or could potentially have a conflict, please let us know and disclose that relationship so we're aware of it. And then we also kind of rely on you to keep that in mind. And if there are any votes or decisions or conversations that come up, be really aware of that and make sure that we know if you need to abstain from a specific vote or something like that, to make sure that the process is, fair and equal and we're following these guidelines for ethical responsibilities. Any questions or comments about conflicts? No? Okay. Excellent. So now we're kind of at the meat of what we're doing here today and where we'd really like to get some feedback from you. We did want to follow up on sort of the end of our conversation from the last GAC meeting where we were kind of talking about, what the RFGP would look like, how we might make award decisions, and some ideas were thrown around, but nothing was really settled on. So we did want to acknowledge that and come back to that discussion, but provide a little bit more framework on how your feedback can really help us and how to move forward. So, we put a lot of thought and discussion into how we could work within the existing grant requirements and process and preferences as defined in the statute. And I think our conversation last time fit in with that very well. But we do want to make clear a couple of things. One thing is, sorry, how do I phrase this? What we would really love to get feedback on from you folks to make our jobs easier and to eventually make your jobs easier down the line is what types of information from the application, as it exists, as it was published, that we could present to you that would help you make decisions about, what a good program looks like, or, what you're looking for. So anything that's included in the application, if there are pieces of information that seem more pertinent, or, you know, you would like us to make sure to include, that's something that we very much would like to know. Another piece is those preferences. Unlike the grant requirements, which obviously are required, and we have to make sure that any funded programs align with, there's that list of 7 to 9 preferences of what an ideal program might include. So how those preferences applied, how those preferences are applied is a little bit different. We have a little bit more discretion in that. We want to make sure that they're done uniformly, and preferences are given based on some rationale from you folks, but there is a little bit more wiggle room in terms of how you guys want to apply those. So that's another area where we would love to get some feedback from you. I've not had enough coffee yet this morning. I apologize.
When we get to that part of the when we get to that part of the conversation, can we just see those preferences again? You'll show them to us when we're there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll flip back to that slide in a moment. So I do want to just note what we can't do in this process, and that's once we get the applications, once the RFGP has been published, even, we can't add criteria because it needs to be, advertised, and they need to have an appropriate chance to respond to any requests for information. So we can't add criteria at this point in the process, and we can't ask for more information that's not already included in the application, or make decisions based on some criteria that's not already included in the application. So that's kind of out of scope of this conversation. And it's sometimes a tricky line to figure out. So we just wanted to put that out there. So I'll flip back to the preferences, so we can have a look at that. And we're gonna, I guess this is the point for discussion, really, is, again, what types of information do you think would be most useful to look at out of what we're trying to ask? And the request for grant proposals is really focused. All of the questions are focused on the grant requirements and preferences. So, basically, are there program preferences here that, folks have recommendations on how to look at, or are there types of information that you want to see in our presentation when we do our next GAC meeting? So hopefully that made sense.
Hey, Simon, I guess the question I had in my mind, and I'm going to answer it for myself, but see what you think, is, would there be any sort of weighting to these preferences? One gets 5 points, one gets 2 points. And if so, well, my assumption was no, because otherwise you would have published probably with the criteria, like some of that weighting. And so I guess, are they just kind of weighted equally in that sense?
So we decided, because there are so many requirements and preferences already laid out, and we didn't want to kind of overly complicate things, especially with this short grant period, we didn't publish a scoring sheet. So we're not going to utilize like a formal scoring sheet that gives X number of points to X thing. But there is room on how you apply the preferences, and what preferences you focus on, because we do give opportunity in the application for applicants to respond to every single one of these equally. So if that answers your question. And if we do kind of determine that there's, something specific for planning grants or something in this list that you really want to focus on, we would have to have a clean rationale for why that would be. They can't be just given preference arbitrarily. And Casey, please jump in at any point if I'm saying something incorrectly or if you have something to add.
Rima, you got it.
Okay.
Hi, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
This is Tristan.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think my audio wasn't working earlier. So so I guess I wanted to know about the application, um, and this distinction that's being made in terms of, we can advise, it sounds like we can advise on the information that we want to receive from the application that already exists, but we cannot comment on the application itself. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, you can comment on the application. I think we stuck to we can't change what's already in the published application or ask for additional information from applicants. We tried to stick very closely to what the program preferences and grant requirements were, just to make it very simple given this short time period. And then try and really get that money out and make sure that our discussion was based on that. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. And I'm realizing,
Okay.
sorry, I've had a very busy week, so I didn't have a chance to look at the application. So that makes sense since it's already been published. So I will give this comment and with the caveat that I haven't looked at the application yet. But I think something that would be very important for me that I would want to know about is just how, like, for these planning periods, what they're hoping in terms of partnerships that they're trying to build for referral sources. So, if there's a group that is trying to do a community referral process, how are they what is their outreach to different community-based organizations? What does that look like? If there are programs that are trying to, have develop a partnership with a police department, a sheriff's department, or a district attorney's office, who are those folks that they're planning to reach out to, and just kind of some really, broad brushstrokes of what that process would, what they would hope from that. I mean, I know that there's not a lot that can be concretely said, especially if they're trying to seek a partnership with a system partner. We don't know yet what those parameters are going to be. But that's the thing that I would be the most interested in. Yeah, that's all I got right now. Thank you.
We can absolutely include that information for those planning grant applicants. So what we did for the program preferences is we said, are you planning, based on your knowledge of what your plan is right now, do you know you have this component? And if so, how? So we can we should be getting some of that information, but we do have to keep in mind that some folks that apply might not even be that far along in the process. So we'll have to take a look at that when we actually get the applications, but including that information in what we present to you is absolutely something we can do. And Casey had her hand up, but I think
You said exactly what I was going to say. Was
okay.
I think that we indeed can include all that information in the slide presentation to the grant advisory committee, but the planning grants are essentially for planning, and we would encourage any applicant who maybe doesn't even have an idea of what community partners they want to reach out to discuss their plan to figure out who those people might be. I think that would also be a suitable answer. So just wanted to weigh in there, but Rima, you covered it, and it looks like Elaine has her hand up next.
Very similar sort of thread of thought, and would just want to add that if it's not a planning grant, one of the things that I would be really interested in hearing from applicants is what is the state of their current partnerships. What shape are they in? How are they going? And so if people put that in their application, if they describe who they are working with and who they're, whatever, I would love to know that, because I know that some.
Oh, I think you went in and out. The sound seems to have dropped off for me, at least.
Yeah, for me too. Elaine, are you still there?
I am still here, but I'm going to switch computers. I'll be back.
Okay. So when you jump back on, we can go right back to your comment if we don't answer it fully. But so for the folks that aren't planning grants, so that's going to be the existing grantees that are asking for supplemental funds. The question is, or the information you would like to see is what their current state of partnerships is with their program right now. And I'm completely blanking on how we framed that question for the supplemental grants. I totally
Yeah,
apologize. Let me check.
no, I'm looking into it too, Rima.
Okay.
So I think for the supplemental funding opportunity for existing grantees, we really instead focused on how would those supplemental
Right.
funds build capacity for their existing program. It wasn't necessarily a time for evaluation or a status check of existing programs. It was a recognition of, we know you likely need more funding. This is a short project period. If you were to get additional funding, how would that support your existing program in building capacity under the umbrella of the spirit of the Restorative Justice Grant?
And let me just look at the
Okay.
questions really quickly. So to that point, though, I think that is something that we have been talking about internally and whether or not we're able to include it in this process. We have been discussing doing kind of a status check on all of the existing programs and trying to get a little bit more, do a review of what kind of data we have available. So I don't know that that'll specifically answer your question, but that's definitely something we can add to that list internally. So maybe even if we don't get it through this specific process because we didn't specifically state it in the application questions, we can get back to you on that.
I would add too that that kind of status check question isn't there's an excellent opportunity to do so as part of quarterly reporting in the narrative. So Elaine, we can absolutely ask that to all existing grantees to give us some sort of update on how those partnerships are going. Are there any that they need technical assistance or support and engagement with? I think that that's something that we definitely have within our toolbox to ask existing grantees. But I agree with Rima that as part of this particular supplemental funding request, we did not include it as part of the application because we do not want it to be a onerous, burdensome process on folks just trying to obtain a little bit more money for a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I just looked at the questions again and refreshed my mind on what we decided on. For that streamlined application for the existing folks, we really focused on just the requirements because we kind of, the program preferences, we kind of figured are more around new applicants, and those applicants are already funded and are just requesting capacity building, like Casey said. So, did you have any additional questions? Were you able to join back on, Elaine?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, that was helpful just to kind of know. I feel like we've been in that state of wait and see for a really long time. And that it's not in the quarterly reports is and that it can be is interesting to me. But I guess I'm starting to think about how we're going to justify continuing to ask for funding. And there are some really it's probably an offline conversation, and I'm happy to take it offline. But I'm just wondering how we're going to continue to support these programs, especially in challenging counties where there's a lack of willingness or support in some ways that could potentially be handled by some maybe some different approaches outside of this funding stream for the programs themselves. So I would love to be in a conversation about about that. We're just seeing, I'm hearing about programs that are not being supported by in their local communities. And I'm wondering if there's ever something we can do about that. So
Right.
I'll take that offline for now.
Yeah, I think that is, you're not alone in that concern, both on the additional funding or continued funding piece, and making sure we have the information to support those programs. I do, again, we'll take note of that and see what we can do internally to support that. Some of it is kind of out of the scope of what we can do. And certainly for this particular meeting, we want to focus on this application process now in front of us so we can make the decisions around that. But thank you for bringing all that up. I mean, we always want to know these concerns and see what we can do to support the program as best we can.
I'd add, Rima, too, that Elaine, maybe it would be something that you'd want to talk to RJCO about, since they have great, robust relationships with, all the grantees. That might be an area of support or technical assistance that they may have capacity to provide.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I see Kathleen's hand is up.
Yeah, my question, or not question, but request would be when you present the information to us, is really getting a good idea for the new planning grants or what their goals are for the program. So I think really question number one for me would be something that I'd really want to kind of know what their goals and objectives are to move forward.
Okay. Number one, that is very helpful. Thank you.
I had one, actually, I wanted to kind of piggyback off what Elaine said. I guess I had initially misinterpreted her question, but in a way that gives me a new question to ask.
Okay.
I'm curious for new grantees, for folks who are applying for planning grants. I would be interested in the current state of their community partnerships, not in terms of, having already developed a referral partner, but just what do those kind of community collaborations look like? Do they have, organizations, service providers in their region that they already have strong connections with? So that would be something I'd be interested to know about.
And we can definitely include that as well. I think that's right in line with the last question that you were asking. And let me just, so on the application, like I said, we included those preferences, which kind of address that. And basically it's a yes or no. Does your plan currently include this, or do you plan to include this? And if so, how? So there's a two-part to the question. So we'll be able to, depending on what we get back, kind of look at who answered yes, who provided details, and we can present those to you. So looking at this, I don't see any additional hands up. Looking at this list, is there anything else that stands out as something you really want to see in the information that we get back? Shannon, looks like you just put your hand up.
I did. That's my hand. Yeah, it just got me, I love this group because I love the questions that come up for me as I kind of hear what other people are thinking of. And I hear you saying, like, I understand the concern of not wanting to make it too burdensome, but is there a chance to ask for, like, if they want to offer voluntary information? Something about, like if they want to share additional information that they think it would be helpful for us to kind of know, just to kind of get more of the lay of the land for all these different jurisdictions and communities. And I'm not like, tied in as much as some people in this group, but I think it would be really helpful just to even use the comments as record to see where we can steer efforts moving forward.
Yeah, and again, Casey, feel free to jump in. I think in some of our grants application processes, we're able to build in a kind of a feedback process, like for the marijuana application that we just did. we had enough time that the grant review committee could ask questions of the applicants once they had reviewed them, and the applicant could then respond and provide additional information. Given the timeline for this, that just wasn't feasible because we just need to get the funds out to make sure that they're used within the biennium. So I think we can present things that they provide voluntarily in the initial application, but we can't go back and ask for more information if questions come up, because we won't be able to do that uniformly across all applicants within the timeline.
I would add too that for the planning grant specifically, so all of the application questions are included in the request for grant proposals that was sent out to the grant advisory committee members. So that's what I'm looking at right here, the RFGP. There's, for it being a program proposal, we did try to ask some robust questions to get at the heart of a lot of these concerns and questions that you guys have. So I would recommend that you review those questions, and then as applications roll in, if things come up that you would love to follow up on, while there may not be an opportunity to do so as part of the decision-making process, just due to the short timeline and the necessity to get these funds out, hopefully ahead of January so that folks have 6 months to spend that money, we can certainly ask as part of quarterly reporting for any kind of follow-up or status check information, and then report back to you in a meeting such as this. While it wouldn't carry like decision weight behind it, it could be informational. And then looking ahead, I think this goes back to Elaine's original point, looking ahead as to, the future of funding for restorative justice grant program. We are excited for the potential opportunity to have additional funding, to have a brand new grant cycle, and to really focus on that process with you all and build it the way that you all want to see it. That will be a much more in-depth, inclusion of the grant advisory committee into building the application, building the request for grant proposals, figuring out what specific things you want to know from applicants. If someone had received RJ funding in the past, what do you want to know from them, particularly if they're going to continue a program in the future? That would be the point to ask those tougher questions. For this particular $1.3 million that's left over, you all requested that we get this money out, and we are doing that the quickest way possible. That's not going to be burdensome on existing grantees or new applicants, so that they can get some money to begin planning or building capacity.
Yeah, and I would just add, we wanted to, again, we don't know what we're going to get back. We don't know who those applications are going to come from and what state and of readiness they'll be in, versus, whether they've already started a plan or whether they're just getting into the planning process. So we did want to leave a little bit of flexibility there to not exclude a group of people that might benefit from this funding. So there's a little bit of tension between getting information and acknowledging the fact that they may not have the information available yet. So I think that's something we're feeling a little bit in this discussion. Again, thank you for the comment, and I want to reiterate what Casey said. We take all this information in, all these comments, and we try and address them however we can, whether it's through this specific task we have in front of us right now or later on. We do try and make sure your concerns are addressed. So thank you for bringing that up. And Kathleen has her hand up again.
You'd asked about our preferences and kind of how we might, in general terms, kind of weight some of the grant program preferences. When I'm looking at this list, obviously they're all kind of critical to what we're doing.
Right.
My gut feeling, though, particularly since we're providing an opportunity for planning grants, is to really, for me, I look at number one and giving more rural communities this opportunity to really plan and give them the time that they need. but I also think in that sense, it kind of takes number 2 and potentially number 5 and kind of pushes those down a little bit, because with the more rural the community, the less likely they're going to easily find culturally appropriate services providers in the area. And if you're dealing with communities that are just kind of barely breaking into the world of restorative justice, there may be more pushback on presumptive prison sentences, including those kind of programs in, and that those might be something that people have to, their communities have to work up to. So when I look at this list, I probably would put number 1 as my highest priority, and probably, although I think if the local community has access to culturally appropriate services, I think that's really important, but I think that's going to be difficult for us to know the full realm of services that are available in more rural parts of the country, our state.
And they might not know at the planning stage either.
They
So
might not either.
yeah, I think that's a great point. So we can definitely, highlight number 1, along with what's already been mentioned. And again, part of this, we're not really sure what we're going to get back and how far along folks are going to be. So some of it's going to be adjusted when we see the information that we actually get back. But yeah, that's very helpful. We can certainly highlight that. Is there any other comments or suggestions or information that seems particularly pertinent that you want to make sure that we include in our summary and in our staff analysis?
Yeah, I've got something else.
Okay.
I would be interested in knowing if any of the new applicants are pursuing partnerships with any training and technical assistance agencies, and also whether there are any kind of plans for different types of trainings that they're going to receive.
I think, okay, let me just run through the questions in my mind. That's wording that specific way wasn't outlined in the preferences or guidelines. That is something we'll be able to tell from the budgets if they ask for TTA assistance. So we can include that information when we look at the budget requests. It might not be as detailed because it's not connected with a narrative section. To roll programs out appropriately. So we can look at some information. It might not be as robust as some of the other questions. So, sorry, I'm taking notes here. And it looks like Elaine has her hand up again. Elaine, did you have something to say? Are you having difficulties?
There. I was having trouble unmuting my mic. Sorry. It's like push the buttons wasn't working. I'm not exactly sure how to frame this question, but what I remember about our last round is that there were people that were in the beginning stages of their development. But beginning didn't mean just thinking of the idea. Beginning usually was pretty far along with some experienced people, some experienced connections, some basis for the need being identified and assessed already in place. And so I really appreciate the idea of having some picture of what people are already doing and how far and honestly it'll be hard to weight somebody and maybe this is where I'll need to be schooled that is at those so early stages that they don't have something under their belt that leads them into this work. And I know we want to get this money in hands of people that are in a very creative stage, and everybody had to start somewhere. But it will matter
that people have an idea of not just their goals, but of how they got to those goals and about how they and what they do have knowledge about that they're building on. And so wherever that can be highlighted in your information back to us, the steps that they have taken to identify the need and the potential for the goals that they're setting would be really important for me to see. And it'll be important enough that if those things aren't present, it's going to be hard to know how to make a decision.
I think that is an excellent point, and that is something we can, provide to you at least to some degree through what we asked in the application. So we can definitely do that. So we do ask them kind of what their overarching vision is and what their timeline is. We'll also be able to see based on how many of the grant requirements and program preferences that they're able to respond to, kind of how far along they are. And we can certainly survey all the applications and summarize that information for you in some way. We'll have to figure out exactly how like to efficiently present it to you, but that should be something that we can use to frame what we present. Sorry, that was kind of a vague answer, but I absolutely think we can do that for you.
Yeah, I'd add, Rima, that those questions, Elaine, are specifically called out in the planning grant application questions. So we've got those nailed down. You'll be able to see all of the responses in robust, and we've asked applicants if this information is not yet available, please state so and maybe add why. I do want to highlight that you are correct that when we rolled out the Restorative Justice Grant Program, there were applicants that were in a early planning, maybe beginning to think about piloting stage, and that they were at a different level of engagement in the process, and maybe even had a few more of their ducks in a row. They had a technical assistance provider, on included as part of their budget because they had thought about this. But what's unique about the planning grant in this sense, so it's a whole new part of the restorative justice grant. It's flexibility for those people in that creative space that you were talking about to just take 6 months to see if they can come up with an action plan. And I think that maybe the grant advisory committee would have a unique opportunity to review that end product, in June of 2025, say, hey, you had this planning grant. These are the things that you had set out to accomplish, the milestones, the deliverables. It's been 6 months. So we've reviewed now your action plan, and here's some guidance that we want to offer, you as you move forward. And, hopefully we can say, we also got more money in the legislative session, and we hope that you apply for that as a robust, piloting or operational program. But I think there's a unique difference that this planning grant opportunity is not the same due to its insanely short project period of 6 months. And that's kind of the unique point as compared to the original grant that had, a 18-month project period for folks to really get their legs underneath them and have all the time and support to roll out. So just wanted to highlight that difference.
So Elaine, did you have an additional question? Your hand's still up. Or did we address that?
You did. Thank
Okay,
you.
excellent. So we have some really good feedback at this point. So thank you. That helps us give a direction and will help us really structure and focus that staff review. Is there anything else? We set aside a good amount of time for this discussion, so we can continue going through these preferences and collecting ideas if folks still have them. I'm not seeing any hands raised, but I just want to make sure we don't, cut anyone off and make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. If there anything else that we should really look at, highlight for you guys, that you know you want to really consider when making these award decisions. I'm not seeing anything. Excellent. Well, again, we do have things that are in scope and out of scope, but if you think of anything in the interim between now and when our next grant advisory committee meeting, us and let us know, and we can, if it's in scope, see what we can do to accommodate that. This really is about giving you guys what you need to make that decision efficiently and effectively, so the money goes out to the right programs. And so on that note, I'm going to just throw out a couple of other considerations that we kind of covered already, but we have a slide for it. So here we go. Again, we have a short timeline for the application review, short project period. As we've discussed, there is that uncertainty of continued funding, and we want to make sure all the funds we have currently are put out there and used to their best use for the purposes of this grant. And you guys have already talked about these, but just please keep them in mind as we move forward. Beyond that, we just have next steps to talk about. So I just want to give another minute in case anyone has any more discussion points about what we've been discussing during this presentation meeting. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next steps? No? Simon shaking his head. All right, don't see any hands or anything. So as I mentioned, we have the Request for Grant Proposals webinar next week at 9/26 at 10 a.m. So again, if you know anyone that you think would be eligible and appropriate to be funded through this, please share the information with them. Let them know about the webinar. We'll be going in detail, through the application process and all the requirements and everything. The applications are due on October 28th at 1 p.m. So the next step for us as a group is to schedule this meeting where we're actually going to be doing the decision making and recommendation process. Again, we're hoping to get it done in one shot. That's why we're setting it up with all this information that you folks are looking for. And as we showed on the timeline, we're looking for that first week of November. So we're going to include, in our follow-up for this meeting, we're going to include the doodle poll with potential dates. Please respond and let us know what dates work for you guys as early as possible so we can get that scheduled, and make sure that we have quorum for that meeting, because we will need quorum for that meeting to be able to present those recommendations in a timely manner to the commission. So, we really need to make sure that that is scheduled and we have the right level of attendance for it. And then as soon as we have the schedule for the end of the year for our commission meetings, we'll let you know when we're able to get on the agenda for either November or December when that happens to be. As again, our goal is just to get the decisions made and then the contracts out as early as possible so folks can get to the actual, to use the funds within the time period that we have left. Am I forgetting or missing anything, team?
I would just encourage the, committee members to review the grant solicitation that includes all of those application questions that you and I were referencing today. Rima sent that out this last Monday to all committee members. So take a look at that. Feel free to reach out to Rima and Avery if there are, specific questions about that. And then when the applications roll in, I think we'll likely do a Google Drive access link for all of those like we have with other grant processes. So to kind of give committee members an idea of what that process would look like, Rima would send out an email with a link to that drive in which you can access the planning grant applications versus the capacity building applications from existing grantees, to really have an opportunity to review those and prepare for that grant advisory committee meeting for the review and decision and recommendations.
Yeah, that's an excellent reminder. And just to bring it back to that timeline, like I said, the CJC staff review is a very short period of time, which also means your review prior to the GAC meeting. The next meeting that we have, if you want to pre-read those applications before we have the discussion, it's not going to be a long period of time for you guys either. So just keep that in mind. I know it's, on top of what you already do in your day jobs, and we would love to be able to give you more time if we could, but unfortunately, we're just working under some tough constraints. And so we appreciate your willingness to move fast with this stuff.
Totally. And that is, a huge reason why, we're so grateful to you all today for providing the input that you have, so that when REMA at least is building this presentation for you all to react to in November at that meeting, some of these things that you've asked for are highlighted on the slides, so you don't have to do the digging and that sort of thing. Of course, CJC are going to complete their staff analysis and, be as in depth with these applications as possible to report back to you the details. But I think due to the nature of the short timeline, I would ask for everyone's patience and flexibility, as it might be the case that Avery and Rima are turning pages in applications live with you on the call, and it becomes a real group effort to kind of figure out what these folks are attempting to accomplish. But I'm excited for this process, and again, so grateful to all the committee members and to our CJC staff for getting something out and into the world so quickly, and hopeful for the future of RJ.
Absolutely, I completely second that. So do we have any remaining questions before we sign off today? Even if you don't know them now, again, please feel free to send it to us. I'm happy to have discussions with any of you guys individually, especially since I'm, newer to this project. So questions, comments before we kind of close for the day? No, I'm not seeing any.
Congratulations, Casey.
Thanks, Tristan.
We'll
do a baby show and tell in January when I return.
We had a CJC baby shower for her, and we're like expecting some pictures because we got some really cute clothes for her baby. Okay, well, on that lovely positive end note, thank you guys so much for your time today. Thankfully we managed to get through everything we wanted to in a shorter amount of time, so you guys get some of your day back that maybe you had scheduled for this meeting. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll be following up. Look for our updates on this. We look forward to our next meeting. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.